So I just have two items to discuss. They're really more like updates. There's less of a discussion that we have to have about them, unless you have questions or comments. But the first one is, so we created the high level direction page for software supply chain security. Really, the next step, as I see it, is to take that and produce a more practical and tactical roadmap of where we're at. I know at least David has shown some interest in getting status updates as to how we're progressing on all of this. So I went ahead and updated the description of that epic. So this is meant to be the place to track what we're actually doing in the more near term versus the direction, which is super long term. It covers just our high level vision and probably is like 3 years out for GitLab to achieve everything that we talk about, if not more than 3 years on the direction page. So any feedback that you have on this is welcome. Of course, we don't have any dedicated software supply chain security developers. So I am at the mercy of the other PMs in the company to prioritize these things. And if they don't prioritize them, that's completely understandable because they have a lot of other things to worry about besides just software supply chain security. But this way we can at least track it and prioritize it from the lens of software supply chain security.
Yeah, I mean, I've been out and haven't been able to track progress on this stuff for the past couple weeks, but I was impressed to see that it looks like adding the software attestations to enable SLSA level 2 is already like scheduled for 15.1. So I was impressed to see that.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised with how many different product managers are involved.
Yeah, there are a lot. In fact, not everyone is even necessarily represented on this list because there are some smaller items that probably are not worth bubbling up, but even things around like MR approvals and, so Sam Kerr is involved, Kai is involved. We've got several product managers that have, at least some piece of work in all of this. Hannah on the authentication and authorization, where she's working to create, fine-grained RBAC permissions, all of that kind of factors in one way or another. So yeah, if you have thoughts on that, it's welcome. If you know of other items that would be good candidates for that epic, please feel free to reach out to me, or if you see things that you feel are misprioritized. Some of the lower items, I didn't worry too much about the priority, but hopefully we have the right priority, at least for the top 5. So my only other comment is that I've been attending the SLSA working group with the OpenSSF and participating in some of those discussions. Marshall, I know originally we had the question around service generated. Does that mean that the GitLab runner itself has to generate it, or does that mean that it just has to be scripted up? So that has actually gone through some extensive discussion in that working group lately. And the consensus is that the original intent of that requirement was just that it was scripted, essentially. They described it as at SLSA level 1, they envisioned someone just opening up a text editor and creating the attestation manually, whereas SLSA level 2, the idea was that that would be scripted up in a way that it was stored in a CI/CD tool, and at a bare minimum, in order to change that, it would have to go through all of the normal reviews and approvals of source code. And then step 3 was non-falsifiable, which starts to get into better management of all of the secrets. So that was the intention, but the group also agreed with your take on that rule, which is that as it is written currently, it does sound an awful lot like the GitLab runner itself actually has to generate that. And that was not the intention. So they're planning to do a revision and just a rewording to make all of that a whole lot more clear. We talked about potentially moving that level of scrutiny to like salsa level 4. Anyway, so that's all being discussed very actively there. I think regardless of what salsa level it lands in, we should still move forward with having the runner generate the attestation, because in my opinion, that's probably the most secure way it could be generated. So I don't know that it affects our development plans very much, but if they do come out with a revision, it will impact our marketing, because it will make it much easier for us to claim support for salsa level 2. And if we can get our integration with Vault worked out, hopefully we can even claim salsa level 3 support soon as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree with you that I don't think it would change our priorities, because ultimately, like, it doesn't matter what level it is, we got to get there anyway. And also, like, just in general, I don't think that there's nothing to productize unless we bake the functionality into the tool. You know what I mean? So like users being able to achieve salsa level 2 without us doing any, like, we only provide convenience, and we only like provide any real functionality by making it service generated. So there's nothing to build if otherwise, right?
Yeah, one thing is, I looked at that discussion on GitHub, and it seems that the thing that they are concerned with is not the implementation. It's the fact that the end user or the maintainer of the project should not be able to get the secret key and use it to sign arbitrary things. So the requirement here, it's not implementation dependent. It's just that we need to be able to make it so that the project maintainers can't sign anything besides the actual artifacts that they're going to be shipping. And the thing is even if we have the runner generate these artifacts, we kind of, the thing is you can self-host runners. So it's possible that a maintainer can set up their own runner, and they might be able to get the secret out of that runner, and they might be used to sign things. So even if we do that with the runner producing artifacts, it's possible that it still might not be SLSA level 3. So we have to be careful about that. I think there was a blog post about how GitHub implemented this recently. And I think what they had a requirement that you could only use GitHub hosted runners to do it, I believe. And so that way, GitHub, the GitHub system administrators basically are the only ones that have access to the infrastructure, not the general end users.
Yeah, I think the one of the biggest innovations that SigStore has brought to the table here is the like keyless signing mechanism that like Folkio provides.
Yeah.
And I think that whether your runners are self-hosted or not, us either just hooking into the public Folkio instance or running an instance of Folkio as part of all GitLab installations is a convenient way around all of that, right? Because then you have this like sort of like decentralized zero trust system where the runner's just exchanging the JBT that it got from GitLab with the Folkio instance to get a temporary key that it can sign artifacts with. And then like we still sort of retain control over the system that's generating those temporary signing keys. And we would be able to not issue keys to things that don't have like a token, right? Like you'd have to have that signed JBT as well. So yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I agree. I think that's the right direction to head. From a marketing perspective, I do hope that they revamp these requirements because I think it will make it easier for us to market this in the near term. But if we can keep building towards that end solution, that's also going to give us some competitive differentiators in the long term as well.
Yeah, I wonder, I'm thinking right now is, you know, if we have some way to provide a CI job that cannot be changed by the user, then that could also, I'm pretty sure that could also satisfy the requirement. So I'm wondering if the work that Dove is doing on the CI/CD catalog might be able to help us with that, because it takes a different approach from the CI templates that we have right now, where they can easily be changed.
So we also have compliance pipelines, which can be changed by administrators, obviously, and compliance teams, but that is a way to separate it out from the developers.
And so help me understand the problem you're trying to solve there, because like I think if we're all in agreement that like we're going to instrument the runner to do this, then I don't think that's necessary, right? Because like if the runner is just going to sign all the artifacts that it uploads, then it's happening outside the execution context anyway, right?
So the problem is that that's the long-term vision, but we're not there yet as of today. And so how do we do that now?
Yeah,
so
I mean, we're talking about doing it in 15.1 though, right? Is that right?
So let me just clarify. I'm not saying I don't think we need to go with the with having like an immutable CI job. I'm just suggesting a possible different implementation that we might be able to do that might possibly be easier than having a runner do it. I'm not sure if it's the best approach, but you know, I'm just putting the idea out there.
Yeah, I mean, Marshall, I don't think that's going to be completed in 15.1. That milestone is usually when development starts. And I think your hope for what all might be done by 15.1 is maybe not, your expectations aren't quite right, because you're talking about handling the signing through Folkio. I don't think that's all included in that. What we're talking about for 15.1 is just an iterative step towards that, of having the runner generate that metadata. I think we still need to probably have a follow-on issue to sign the metadata that we're generating. So it's kind of it's an incremental process. What we're planning for 14.1 would probably allow us to achieve SLSA level 2, but maybe not SLSA level 3. And
Okay.
again, I don't know how many milestones it'll take to do that, right? So we'll start in 15.1 is what it's scheduled for, but it's unclear if it's actually going to be completed then. So, we do still want to like market and talk about our software supply chain security between now and then, which is why I was suggesting, well, maybe we talk about compliance pipelines as a way to create, it's not an immutable CI job, but it's a restricted access CI job, because somebody can still configure it, but it takes that control away from the maintainers of the project.
Yeah, I think it would make more sense to focus on like what is necessary to keep pushing the sign provenance forward, as opposed to like, I wouldn't want to spend time on these ancillary things that like sort of,
It's just those
Yeah.
I'm talking about a marketing effort, not an engineering effort. Because those are, just looking at what we have today, right? We already have compliance pipelines. If that can help us in some way from a marketing perspective, like, let's use that and talk about it now. That's what I'm suggesting.
sure.
I'm not suggesting that we divert engineering resources to it. So I
And
guess
then,
my question,
like,
Brian, is
well, the other thing is like, I think the in toto like attestation format includes the signatures. So like, I don't think we can like produce in toto attestations that are unsigned. I mean, maybe that part of the like maybe that part of the payload is optional, but I didn't think it was. So I think you kind of have to do both. Like we have to figure out some way, and it can be that like we require users to generate private keys and put them in as CI variables or something to start with. But yeah, I just think it's going to be difficult to not bake it into the runner. Like everything else, I feel like is just going to be more complicated than just doing it natively.
yeah, so maybe you're not understanding, but I agree with you. I think we should keep going down that route. As I read that issue to generate metadata, it doesn't seem to me like it includes, the scope of it includes the work to sign the metadata that they're producing. I can circle back with Darren on that, but I'm assuming that would need a separate issue and a separate body of work. So we're still probably a number of months away from having that. I'm guessing it'll probably be like another 6 months before all of that work is completed.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So I guess my question would be, Brian, you talked about having immutable CI pipelines. Would the spirit of the requirement be met through the compliance pipelines? Or does it have to truly be immutable as you're understanding it?
I think that's maybe for compliance pipelines. I don't remember how exactly they work. Because that's not usually something I work on. But it might be able to fulfill the requirement if we.
So it works very similar to our policies where it gets stored in a separate repository. And then it's forcibly included in, like, it actually runs instead of the project's GitLab CI.yaml file, and then it has an include statement to include in the local project CI.yaml file.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I remember now. That wouldn't work because the compliance pipeline itself is editable by whoever owns the compliance policy project, right?
Yeah.
So it would have to be, the CI configuration would have to only be changeable by the administrator of the GitLab instance, not by any of the users on the GitLab instance. Does that make sense?
But potentially it could meet that need, but only if they locked down their compliance project to only the administrator, basically.
Yeah.
Which they could.
If there was like one global compliance project for the whole GitLab instance that only admins could edit, something like that, then that might work. That does sound kind of scary though. Because, you know, if the entire instance is using one project and like you do that on GitLab.com and somebody gains access to that project, then they can change every pipeline on GitLab.com. So
Yeah, for sure. All right, so we'll probably not bother with marketing this for now. I guess. Was an interesting idea though. Thanks for bringing that up, Brian. All right, anything else that either of you would like to discuss today?
I don't have anything.
Cool, thanks
Yeah.
for joining. Appreciate the discussion.
All right,
Have a good one.
bye.